Hey everyone, it's Kyle Niswant. I have a board state set up here. I played in the pre-release on Saturday, and in the semifinals, I had one of the closest and craziest and kind of most stressful games that I've played in a long time. I kind of wanted to share the story with you guys, whoever wants to watch this and listen. Um, so I have a very controlling blue-black deck that was only splashing red in the main board for a lightning axe, most exclusively for just an extra way to use my madness cards, and most importantly from under the floorboards, the madness on that one is way better than casting it regularly, as you can see. So uh, I've gotten myself into a situation where my green-white opponent, who I had already played once in the Swiss, so we're pretty familiar with each other's decks. He managed to get Delirium online very early by cracking the green vessel and putting all the different card types into his graveyard, and then following it up with a turn 4 Soul Swallower. And I didn't have an answer for it right away. The counter spell that I had in my deck was the 5-mana one that investigates 3 times, and when your opponent is on the play and casts this on turn 4, you can't really counter it that way. Um, and so at one, I think I took a hit from it once for 6, and then bounced it to his hand at his end step, untapped, played my 5th land, and passed, hoping maybe I would be able to counter it. He obviously knew about that from our previous games and match, and played a different spell instead, which I was forced to counter to use my mana. And so I've gotten myself into a position where my opponent just has 2 gigantic trampling creatures, and I don't have a very consistent way to discard from under the floorboards to try and, turn the corner and make a swift victory if he taps too many of his guys. So the board is set up such that on my opponent's previous turn, they tapped all 6 of their mana to cast Kessick Direswine, which was pretty bad for me. I thought maybe I could block enough guys with Soul, or block Soul Swallower with enough guys, and maybe use the Death Touch to take it out if he attacks while it's too little to actually just kill my whole, take my full life total in one swing. Um, but this kind of changes things because it's also a giant trampler, and I would need to spend way more mana doing multiple death touch things, and I'd have to pretty much lose my whole board. So I untapped, I drew Drown Yard Explorers for the turn, which is not going to help me this turn. The plan that I came up with was kind of one of the following, since my only discard outlet at this point is Rotten Heart Ghoul. I need this to die by blocking, which is fine. It's also a zombie, so if I can get it to trade with one of these, that would be pretty good. And then if I can target myself with the discard, I might be able to get a few zombies, with from under the floorboards, gain a little bit of life, and maybe start stabilizing from there. More zombies with Death Touch guy is pretty good against generic green creatures. Um, Unfortunately, okay, so not unfortunately yet, but so the plan was, I can't really play this because I'll just die to the attack, and uh, playing, spending a bunch of mana on either Moondrakes or Drownyard Explorers means like I can't really cast from under the floorboards with Madness if I am planning to use that as my actual route to victory. Because if I just play this, maybe he doesn't attack this turn and passes. This guy's still bigger. I'm running out of answers for it in my deck. I think I have like 2 or 3 cards that can either bounce or kill it remaining. And even so, it's just, I think I need to cast this at some point. So what I did here was I paid 1 and I cast Sanitarium Skeleton just as an additional blocker. Here we go. And I passed the turn. So my opponent, who has 2 cards in hand, I don't know any of them right now. Or I guess he had 1 card in hand, drew for turn. and he ended up with 2 cards in hand. What he did was he paid a green and cast Traverse the Ulvenwald, which let him search, because he had Delirium, let him search for a creature card and put it into his hand. And the creature card that he searched for was none other than Archangel Avacyn, which I knew was in his deck from our previous meeting. But, you know, as far as things go, like, that's still not the worst thing that could happen to me. This also, during his upkeep, gained 3 additional counters, so he now has a 12/12 and a 6/6, so 18 points of trample, a couple 3-power guys, and this Unruly Mob, which, he only played like a turn or two ago and hasn't done anything yet. But, so he put Avacyn in his hand, which made the Death Touch plan bad. I can no longer, count on this to kill his creatures kind of, at any point, because if he attacks now, I'm forced to block with a bunch of guys, and if I activate Death Touch, Avacyn saves him, and then I'll just have no more guys. He'll still have all his stuff, and plus an Avacyn. So, knowing this, he goes to combat, attacks with all 4 of these guys. I have to figure out blocks, which takes me a little bit now that this is no longer an option. I kind of just am forced to throw away all of my creatures for no gain. So what I end up doing is putting the 1/1 in front of one of the 3-power guys, Sanitarium Skeleton similar in front of the 3-power guy, because they have the lowest toughness and would help the least with the trample damage. So these are no longer dealing any combat damage to me. And then I put the remaining 3 guys in a combination of these 2. So the main thing that I wanted to make sure, it doesn't really matter where they go, except that I want Rotten Heart Ghoul to guaranteed die. So I don't want to put him double blocked in front of one of these and then give my opponent the option to not kill Rotten Heart Ghoul if they are in fact thinking of From Under the Floorboards plus this discard as one of my outs. So I think I put the Ghoul in front of the Dire Swine and then these 2 in front of the Soul Swallower. So with 18 power and 3, 7, 9 toughness, I took 9 damage, going down to 3 life. All of my creatures died. None of his died. The Rotten Heart Ghoul triggered and I targeted myself. So I got to cast From Under the Floorboards with my remaining mana, which was 8. And I got 6 zombie tokens and gained 6 life. So I'll go ahead and put that out here. 6 zombie tokens, and I gained 6 life up to 9. He elected not to cast Archangel Avacyn yet. He knew I already used my counterspell from previous turns, and unless I had another one that he hasn't seen in our other 5 games that we played, then it's a pretty safe bet that this is going to resolve, and it's probably just better for him to not put it on the battlefield and expose it to a removal spell, which I could then play on my turn. So he smartly held that up, plus his 1 unknown card. Well, I gave you a little preview there. So I untap. The card that I draw is not that one. Goodness. I drew a Swamp, which was pretty useless at the time. The only card that I am going for at this point that I think I would be able to win the game off of was Malevolent Whispers, which I boarded in because I saw that he had, a couple of these giant dudes, which if I'm able to just survive an attack from them and then cast Malevolent Whispers, maybe I'll be able to just kill him in one shot. And so, none of these cards in my hand, this is From the Floorboards is cast already. So none of the cards in my hand really save me if I just play them and pass, so I need to crack my clue. So I pay 2 mana, crack the clue, draw my card. I'm very happy to see that it was Malevolent Whispers. So basically it's like, if I cast Malevolent Whispers on the Soul Swallower and attack with all of my zombies, he has to have one of a very small number of cards in order to not die this turn. And so, since this was kind of one of my only outs, I went ahead and cast Malevolent Whispers. So I took his Soul Swallower, and I went ahead and attacked with everything. In retrospect, I think I should have left one zombie back, just in case he had the Destroy an Attacking Creature card. When I was doing the math originally, I thought, I needed to attack with everything in case he had was it Puncturing Light or Puncture Blast or something like that, where you destroy something with a small amount of power, or converted mana cost, so he could kill a zombie, block a zombie, and then like live at 2 life or something like that. But Malevolent Whispers, I kind of hovered over it too quickly, but it gives +2/+0, and I forgot to factor that in. So I shouldn't have attacked with all 6, but I did. He in fact did have the Silver Strike, so he went ahead and cast Silver Strike on the Soul Swallower. Soul Swallower dies. He gains 3 life. He used the Unruly Mob, or gains 3 life, he goes up to 21. Use the Unruly Mob to just go ahead and chump block one of the zombies, taking 10 down to 11. So he's at 11. He still has a 6/6 and a couple of 3-power guys. And if any 2 of these get in, I just die. So luckily I've got Drowned Yard Explorer still in my hand, which will allow me to survive at 1 life if he doesn't have anything. So I play my land. 1, 2, 3, 4. Play the Drowned Yard Explorers. I get a clue token, which is largely irrelevant at this point, but then I ship it back, knowing that his only card in hand is Archangel Avacyn. He draws a card, and I don't know what it ends up being. It wasn't a land, however, because all he did this turn was pass, which was great for me, because if it was like a removal spell or something, I was certainly dead, because I'm just tapped out. And if he attacks with everything as it is, I can block the Dire Swine, taking 2 trample, +3/+3 is 8, leaving me at 1, and then he would be pretty close to dead on the crackback, especially if I have like a removal spell or something for his Archangel Avacyn. So he decides to play it safe, thinking that if he can just flash in Avacyn to either make blocking easier, or just end step it and then use Avacyn in the final swing, that's more likely, for him to win. He also still has this Graph Mole and a clue token to gain 3 life if that's a necessary thing. So he ends up passing back to me. I untap, and the card that I draw is, very luckily, Sinister Concoction. So this was one of the other potential outs to the giant Soul Swallower, but since I was able to get rid of that, a couple of my options here are, I can use Sinister Concoction to just kill this, but and then like play the Nephalia Moondrakes, meaning I could just block his Archangel Avacyn if he flashes it in. Problem with that line is if he has some sort of removal spell for Moondrakes. I know the big 6-mana exile all creatures, and if you have Delirium, you get a 4/4 Angel. That's a card that still exists in his deck. And since he didn't play a spell last turn, it could potentially be in his hand right now. And just giving him extra opportunities to draw that, while he doesn't have to commit Avacyn to the board yet, is kind of a losing proposition. So I just decided to straight up go for it, especially because he only has 6 mana. He cannot both cast Archangel Avacyn and sacrifice the clue token to gain 3 life. So I, play Sinister Concoction. I pay a black, pay a life, go down to 8. I discard Moondrakes, So this has the activated ability in the graveyard where I can pay 6 and exile it to give my whole team flying, which would reduce the number of blockers he has available. So that was the plan. So I discard Moondrakes and target Dire Swine, trying to kill it. He does, a pretty sensible thing, which is cast Archangel Avacyn to give it indestructible, which is fine. The math that I ran was like, if he does this, I still have 7 attackers. He's at 11. He blocks 1. He takes 12 damage, which is kind of what ends up happening. And I win this game by activating this, putting it into exile, and attacking with everything. The other option he had, if he didn't cast Archangel Avacyn, was to just crack the clue, gain 3 life, putting him at 14. But then if he doesn't draw anything to help him, he's still dead to exactly 14 damage. So it was a pretty intense series of events that occurred that allowed me to just barely win this game. I had to peel exactly Malevolent Whispers on that turn. Even so, like, he had the Silver Strike to take care of that, and I was still like very close to dead if he attacked with everything. And then after that, he unfortunately didn't draw land, so he couldn't play both this and the clue token, because if he did that, I was also just dead. And then I drew the Sinister Concoction, which allowed me to put Moondrakes into the graveyard and attack for lethal before he would have a chance to use his mana on his remaining cards. So it was a pretty tense game. My heart was racing pretty quickly for the last 5 or so minutes of that match. Managed to take it down. I thought it was a pretty interesting series of events, so I just kind of wanted to share that with you guys. Kind of a fun story with a bunch of the new cards, a whole lot of different interactions that Shadows over Innistrad allows for this limited format. It's a pretty complicated one with a lot of things to keep track of and a lot of triggers that you can miss and opportunities to get in damage or use your mana most efficiently. And so yeah, that was a highlight of my pre-release. It felt pretty good to win that one. It still would have been an excellent game had I lost. So props to my opponent for making it very, very complicated, given I was still able to cast from under the floorboards for a lot of mana. And I took his best guy, and that still wasn't quite good enough to win the game on the spot. So it was a tough battle, and hope you guys found this story interesting. And yeah, if you guys have any other cool stories from your pre-releases, I'd be interested to hear them. This limited format seems very fun and allows for a whole lot of different interesting scenarios to play out. So yeah, I will see you guys next time.